the abandoned asylum with a secret. Hidden behind a thicket of dying trees, far from the nearest road, stands a structure long forgotten by time. Its windows are shattered, its walls coated in decades of dirt and ivy. Yet, the silence it holds is louder than any scream. Once, it was a beacon of hope, a place meant to heal. But what happened inside these walls turned Blackgrove Asylum into something far more sinister. What we found inside was never meant to be seen. Established in 1912, Blackgrove Asylum was created during a time when mental illness was still deeply misunderstood. Built on 40 acres of isolated countryside, its mission was to treat the afflicted and unstable away from the eyes of polite society. At its peak, Blackgrove held nearly 1,200 patients, many committed involuntarily. A good number were not mentally ill, but victims of circumstance, women with postpartum depression, veterans with shell shock, orphans deemed unruly. The treatments ranged from standard therapy to methods now considered barbaric. Electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, was used extensively, administered without anesthesia, often to control behavior. Then there were the lobotomies. Initiated in the late 1930s, these procedures were justified as breakthroughs. But in truth, they were often punishment, administered in batches of a dozen or more. Many patients never recovered. Some died on the table. The man behind many of these procedures was Dr. Howard Elrich. To his peers, he was a pioneer. To his patients, he was the architect of pain. Staff accounts describe a man obsessed with control. He kept detailed journals, many of which disappeared after the asylum shut down. Some say he experimented with sensory deprivation and chemical treatments never approved by medical boards. What remains of these stories are whispers, sealed court records, and unexplained disappearances. We approached the site just after dawn. The front gates hung open, rusted and forgotten. Nature had begun reclaiming the structure. Grass pushed through cracks in the pavement. Vines climbed the walls like veins. Inside, the air was thick, a mix of mildew, rust, and something else. Something harder to name. The reception desk still had files in the drawers, patient tags, a shattered intercom. We found hallways with broken lights, doors hanging by hinges, exam rooms still littered with aged medical tools. In one room, a child's toy sat in the corner, untouched, covered in dust. Another door led us to what must have been the therapy ward. On the wall, drawings. Crude, scratched into paint, showing figures without faces. Further in, we entered the cafeteria. Tables upturned. Trays still there. One still had utensils arranged neatly, as if waiting for a meal that never came. In the east wing, we found something strange. A section of hallway sealed with drywall that didn't match the rest of the building. Behind it, a narrow corridor led to an unlisted room. There were no numbers on the door. Inside, scorched walls, overturned filing cabinets, and a foul chemical smell. We found charred patient files, half-burned notebooks, and restraints attached to what looked like a dentist's chair. One journal survived the fire. It belonged to patient 327. Their entries began as confused ramblings but grew coherent over time. They described hearing voices, seeing doctors perform trials. One passage read, "He says the voices will stop if I forget. But I never will. I never will." In the back corner, hidden behind an old locker, was a note pinned to the wall. "Do not wake the quiet ones." It was written dozens of times in different handwriting styles. This room wasn't for healing. It was for hiding things. To understand if the pain in these walls left a trace, we returned at night. Our team brought standard paranormal equipment, EMF readers, EVP recorders, thermal cameras, motion detectors. At 1:37 a.m., an EMF meter lit up in room 204, a patient room near the sealed wing. No electronics were nearby. Our thermal camera showed a heat signature in the shape of a figure, standing completely still. When we checked, the room was empty. In the surgical theater, we recorded an EVP. A faint voice whispered, "Don't look." We replayed it again and again. The voice was female, calm, almost resigned. Motion sensors tripped in the hallway behind us while we were reviewing footage. But when we turned, nothing was there. Was it just lingering energy? A trick of acoustics? Or something that never left Blackgrove? The official reason for Blackgrove's closure in 1974 was a lack of funding and changing mental health policies. But local records tell a different story. In the 3 years before the closure, there were 17 unexplained deaths. Most were written off as accidents, falls, seizures, infections. But families of the deceased reported being stonewalled. Several filed lawsuits. None were successful. We found an archived article that was quickly pulled from circulation in 1973. It spoke of a whistleblower nurse who claimed the asylum had a shadow ward, an unlisted section where experimental treatments were tested on unconsenting patients. We believe this is the area we discovered behind the sealed wall. To this day, no former staff have spoken on record about what truly happened at Blackgrove. Many are deceased. Those who remain refuse to comment. Some buildings are abandoned because they're no longer useful. Others because they're dangerous. Blackgrove Asylum may be both. The silence it holds is not empty. It is filled with pain, with secrets, and with questions we may never answer. But the more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. This place was never meant to be found. So we ask you, what do you believe happened behind these walls? Share your thoughts below. And if you're ready for more journeys into the forgotten and the forbidden, subscribe. We'll be waiting.